see behind me, and my little friend here that is perched on my microphone. I'm just gonna dive straight into it. So, not your usual long, rambly intro. Arden of Faversham is probably the earliest surviving example of a domestic tragedy, a Renaissance play that dramatises recent local events. It depicts the murder of Thomas Arden by his wife, Alice Arden, and her lover, and it talks about their subsequent discovery and punishment. Arden House, where the murders occurred, can still be visited today, and is the only residential building left over from the great Faversham Abbey, founded in 1147 by King Stephen. The abbey itself was destroyed by King Henry VIII in 1538 when he dissolved the church, and he had the monastery sent back to Calais brick by brick. Arden House was purchased by Thomas Arden when he worked for the government office that was selling off the monasteries to the highest bidder. Thomas was himself a former mayor of Faversham and obsessed with money making. He bought several properties associated with the abbey, and he was allegedly so obsessed with making money that he neglected his wife Alice, the daughter of John Briganite and Alice Savire, who themselves were very wealthy. Alice is described as young, tall, and well favoured in shape and countenance, basically meaning she was young and very good looking. Fed up with her husband's neglect, Alice began an affair with Richard Mosby, a local tailor. The affair was considered an open secret in the Arden House. Thomas chose to turn a blind eye, unwilling to sever ties to his wife's wealthy family. Alice grew to loathe her husband more and more and decided she needed rid of him. She first attempted to poison him by mixing some poison in the milk she used to make his porridge. But the poison she'd used had a bad taste, so Thomas had a couple of spoonfuls with a tailor's pressing iron before drawing his dagger and slitting Arden's throat. Moseby and Black Will transferred Arden to his counting house. There, Will finished him off. Alice, wanting to make sure that Thomas was dead, stabbed him an additional 7 or 8 times. She paid Will £10 and allowed him to take Thomas's rings and coin purse. Green then provided him with a horse to use for his escape. Alice then had the parlour cleaned and the blood wiped up. The knife and cloth used were discarded. When everything was prepared, Alice Arden welcomed guests for a late supper. The guests included Moseby's sister, Cicely. Alice feigned ignorance as to why her husband was taking so long to return. Alice made sure to keep her guests around as long as possible and constantly reminded them of her husband's suspicious absence. She then sent her servants out to look for Thomas while she, her daughter Margaret, Cicely and a maid called Elizabeth Stafford carried Thomas Arden's corpse to a field next to the nearby churchyard to make it look as if he had been killed outside. The Newgate calendar gives a different account, that Alice had been worried and wept and cried to neighbours, "Oh, where is my husband?" After Thomas's body was found, suspicion immediately fell on Alice. She was confronted by the mayor and subjected to a very strict examination. She initially denied having any knowledge of the murder, but a search of the Ardens' home discovered the victim's hair and blood, as well as the knife and the cloth that had been poorly hidden. Alice was forced to confess her guilt and named her accomplices. The 2 Arden women, Moseby's sister and the maid, were arrested and sent to prison. Moseby was arrested when he was found at a friend's house with blood still on his stockings, and he had the victim's coin purse. Controversially, the goldsmith George Bradshaw was arrested. He was mentioned in Alice and Green's correspondence as the man who introduced them to Black Will, but was otherwise unconnected, with none of the other accused having ever met him. However, he was still found guilty. Alice Arden was found guilty of murder and was burned at the stake in Canterbury. The crime was considered sensational, so people travelled for the execution. Alice went quietly to the stake and initially remained calm as the fire was lit. But as the flames burned her feet, she lost control and cried out, trying to escape. Alice was not strangled during the execution, so was forced to endure the full horror of her death. Apparently back then, sometimes they would strangle the person being burned at the stake to kind of like knock them out, so they wouldn't feel their suffering. Some reports suggest that she survived for a whole hour. The other co-conspirators were also put to death. Michael Saunders was drawn and hanged in Faversham. I believe he was the friend whose house Alice Arden's love was staying at. Elizabeth Stafford was burned at the stake in Faversham. She was dragged howling and screaming, and it took 3 men to secure her to the stake. Richard Moseby and Cicely Pounder were hanged, and Smithfield and George Bradford were hanged in chains at Canterbury. There are 2 accounts related to the fate of John Green. One claims that he was hung at Canterbury, and another claims drama in 1592. The paternity of the play, however, remains unknown and has long been disputed. Some people think it was Shakespeare, some don't. On rare occasions, even